Doris Day believed there were two inviolate truths about Oak Hollow. First, the town's annual pie parade would always fall on the Saturday before the solstice, no matter how fickle the weather. Second, Millie Crump would always try to one-up her in the best crust category. As dawn gilded the clapboard storefronts, Doris rolled out her cinnamon-laced dough in the Oak Hollow Community Centre kitchen and reminded herself to breathe. The mid-June air smelled of strawberries, damp grass, and anticipation. "Need anything else, champ?" asked Betty Farnsworth, the parade chair, poking her head through the swinging doors with a clipboard clutched to her chest. "Just a quiet oven and a prayer," Doris answered. She crimped the edge of her apple maple tart, slipped it onto the bottom rack, and set a timer shaped like a rooster. Then she checked the other competitors' stations. Most were unoccupied. Bakers would filter in all morning, slotting their pies onto the long, skirted tables in the gym. Millie's space, however, was already chaos. Flour fingerprints, an overturned sugar jar, and a suspiciously empty pie tin. Typical Millie, Doris thought. Dramatic entrance guaranteed. She wiped her hands on her apron embroidered with "Kiss the Cook, Fear the Champion," and gathered her spices: cinnamon, clove, star anise, and the all-important jar of family-grown mace. The lid clicked firmly shut. She couldn't risk cross-contamination. Last year, a careless pepper grinder ruined 3 hours' work. By 9, spectators started drifting in, guided by garlands of lilac and banners reading "Pie, Heaven on Earth." Doris stationed herself behind the Day family display. Apple maple, cherry ginger, and a pecan bourbon showpiece that glistened under the gym's fluorescent lights. She spotted Pastor Ellery taste-testing rhubarb. She heard Boy Scouts hawking napkins. But she couldn't find Millie anywhere. That, too, felt ominously typical. Millie believed in grand reveals. She'd burst through the double doors with her secret weapon pie balanced on a silver pedestal, smear lipstick too red for morning, snag first prize, and wink. 2 years ago, she'd done exactly that with a persimmon custard. The memory still grated Doris like lemon zest. At 10 sharp, the brass band struck up a polka. A cheer rippled through the crowd. Betty called for bakers to escort their entries outside, where the parade of pies, floats, wagons, wheelbarrows, would roll down Main Street toward Judges Row. Doris hefted her pecan bourbon onto a wicker tray, nodded at the fire chief, and stepped into the mild sunshine. The air shimmered with butter and sugar. Daffodils bowed against white picket fences. Oak Hollow smelled like a Norman Rockwell painting baked at 375 degrees. Halfway down Main, a commotion flared near Henderson's Hardware, where the floats queued before judging. Doris craned her neck. Tourists in straw hats shuffled backward. A gasp rippled. She glimpsed Sheriff Len Weathers's khaki hat above the swarm. He spoke into his walkie-talkie, face bone white. Betty sprinted toward Doris. Her clipboard trembled. "It's Millie," she whispered. You'd better come." Doris set her tray on the sidewalk and pushed through the clump of spectators. Behind a hastily erected barrier of orange cones stood Millie Crump's float, a miniature replica of Oak Hollow's old gristmill made entirely of pastry. Its centerpiece, a shallow tin of pecan filling, sat in the millpond section. Millie herself was sprawled over it, face buried in the glossy mixture, curls streaked with molasses, arms limp. Pecans clung to her hair like grotesque confetti. Doris's stomach lurched. Millie had a talent for theatrics, yes, but dead theatrics. Not possible. She edged closer until Sheriff Weathers blocked her path. "Scene's closed, Doris." "She's not." Doris's voice failed. The sheriff's grim nod answered for her. An EMT checked for a pulse that wasn't there. Another carefully lifted Millie's head, revealing that her lips were swollen and tinged strange, mottled violet. Pecan filling dripped onto the pavement. A hush settled over Main Street, broken only by the distant oompah of the horn section that hadn't yet learned the parade was cancelled. Sheriff Weathers sighed. Looks like she went nose first into her own pie. Could have suffocated. Doris shook her head vigorously. Millie was clumsy about many things, but pies weren't one of them. She'd never waste a pecan on slapstick. She nearly added that Millie had probably tried every spice known to man to best Doris's bourbon glaze, but swallowed the pettiness. Besides, she continued, pecan filling doesn't set that fast. You could pull yourself out. Weathers pinched the bridge of his nose. You mind giving a statement later? I'll do more than that, Doris said, surprising herself. I'll prove someone murdered her. He raised an eyebrow. What makes you so certain? She stared at Millie's lips. A baker knows colour. Those weren't suffocation bruises, they were chemical. Because cinnamon wasn't the only spice on this pie. That afternoon, Oak Hollow turned from pie heaven to crime scene. The parade dispersed in murmured sorrow. Families carried home partially judged desserts. Doris's Pecan bourbon remained on the sidewalk, untouched, because no one wanted to taste anything that day. The community centre kitchen, too, was roped with police tape. But Doris still had her key, and when the sheriff's deputy posted outside, stepped away to answer a radio call, she slipped inside. Flies buzzed around abandoned mixing bowls. She clicked on the fluorescent strip above Millie's station. The same chaos greeted her, but now Doris passed the mess like a forensic puzzle, rather than a rival's sloppy prep. An overturned sugar jar, yes, but also a toppled tin labelled allspice, its lid flung open. She lifted it, empty. She sniffed the rim. Something sharp pricked her nostrils. Not allspice, which smells like cloves and cinnamon, but astringent, citrusy, wrong. She thought of the violet tinge on Millie's mouth. She searched the shelves. There, behind baking spray and parchment rolls, sat a small, unlabelled brown bottle. She uncorked it cautiously. A chemical punch flooded her sinuses, bitter almonds laced with lemon. Not arsenic, she thought. Too mythic. This was more modern. She stuffed the bottle in her apron pocket and kept looking. On Millie's recipe card, butter-splattered, she saw penciled words. Pecan bourbon, extra kick, finished blue, Greek spice. Greek? Pecan pies didn't hail from the Mediterranean. Millie had been experimenting. With what? Doris crossed to her own station and retrieved her mason jar of mace. She twisted the lid. The aroma, nutty, peppery, comforted her like an old quilt. Then her heart slid toward her shoes. The powder looked finer than she recalled, greyer. She dipped a fingertip, tasted a grain. Mace's floral warmth was missing. Instead, she sensed bitter pith. Someone had tampered with her spice. Doris carried jar and bottle out the back door into afternoon heat. She hailed her neighbour, Doc Renner, who happened to exit the parish hall, balancing a tray of unsold blueberry crustatas the church ladies hadn't returned to the fridge. "Doc," she hissed, "can you do a quick test on these?" He peered over half-moon glasses. "Doris, I'm a retired veterinarian. You have a microscope, don't you? And chemical reagents?" He relented with the shrug of a man bored by retirement. They commandeered the parish kitchen. 10 minutes later, Doc held up 2 petri dishes. "Your jar contains powdered daffodil bulb, highly toxic, and the bottle—" He sniffed, grimacing. "Aconite extract." Doris squeezed the counter. Monkshood, she murmured. She recalled last summer's horticulture fair. Milly had dazzled judges with towering monkshood stalks, indigo as twilight. She had boasted they kept deer away. A drop of its extract could stop a heart, or if stirred into a pie, paralyze respiratory muscles until a baker collapsed face first into her own dessert. But if Milly cultivated aconite, why kill herself with it? And why sabotage Doris's spice? Doc wiped his brow. You need to inform Weathers. He'll tape the place off again, Doris said, mind churning. Evidence will vanish under official glare. I need to know who had access. She pictured the morning. Betty checking registration sheets, the Boy Scouts wandering kitchens selling raffle tickets, the band's drummer flirting with volunteers. Also, Amos Crump, Milly's long-suffering husband, lugging a toolbox for float repairs, and Greg Sanders, food blogger, soliciting secret tips from entrants. Greg had hovered near Doris's station with intrusive curiosity. She'd shooed him away twice. And then there was Sylvie Thorne, Milly's protégée, a pastry student who'd once apprenticed under Doris until defecting for the glamour of Milly's flamboyance. Sylvie, with her mismatched eyes and quicksilver temper, had begged Doris 2 nights ago for mace. Doris had refused, citing competition rules. Sylvie stormed off, muttering about beating the master at her own game. Doris inhaled cinnamon, clove, possibility, and hatched a risky plan. By 6, Oak Hollow's dusk settled peach pink over string lights Betty hadn't found the heart to take down. The town square remained closed, but the American Legion Hall, 2 blocks away, opened its doors for an impromptu comfort potluck. Doris convinced Betty to announce a memorial toast for Milly at 7. Free pie, she promised, courtesy of the remaining entrants. Grief leads the tongue to sugar. Doris arrived early, lugging 3 fresh pies she'd thrown together. 1 pecan, untainted, 1 chocolate chess, and 1 custard spiked with rum, Milly's favourite. She set them on a centre table labelled in loving memory, and kept watch as mourners trickled in. She wore a new apron, pockets deep enough for her phone on voice memo mode. First came Amos Crump, tuxedo jacket swapped for denim, eyes like broken yolks. He accepted a slice of custard, nibbled mechanically. Next, Greg Sanders, camera dangling, tweeting condolences. Sylvie arrived clutching a bouquet of monkshood blossoms, vivid against her black dress. Doris guided each to a table arranged in a dangerous pattern. Sylvie beside Greg, Greg across from Amos. When plates emptied, Doris stood and tapped a spoon on her glass. Voices quieted. We all lost a friend today, she began, gaze flitting over the room. Milly Crump baked with boldness. She spiced life, but someone spiced her pie with more than cinnamon. Gasps. She lifted a mason jar. This was found at her station, aconite extract. She held up her own jar. And this my mace replaced with poisoned daffodil bulb. The killer intended to remove Milly and frame me in 1 sweep. Silence congealed like overcooked custard. Doris pivoted to Sheriff Weathers, who'd arrived, summoned by Betty's cryptic text. Sheriff, you asked for proof. She nodded to Doc, stationed by the coffee urns. He produced 2 lab reports. Weathers read the sheets, brow furrowing. Well, I'll be. Doris fixed her eyes on Sylvie. Only someone with botanical knowledge and access could pull this off. Someone who grew monkshood. Someone Milly boasted about mentoring. Sylvie's mismatched eyes widened. You think I... Doris pointed to the bouquet on Sylvie's chair. It's illegal to harvest that much aconite in Oak Hollow. The Horticulture Club issues permits. Milly had the only one. Yet here you are with fresh cuttings. Amos stood abruptly, chair screeching. Wait, Millie's garden permit went missing a week ago. His face clouded as realization dawned. Greg Sanders raised a tentative hand. I found a story lead last month. Sylvie emailed offering hot gossip about a bake-off scandal if I'd interview her. Sylvie flushed crimson. Oh, please, Greg begs for clicks. Millie promised me partnership, then reneged. She said I lacked the palate of genius. I just wanted to show her. You showed her all right, Doris said, by swapping her allspice tin with aconite powder. But you still needed a scapegoat. So you tampered with my mace jar, daffodil bulbs you dried for floral cakes. If Millie survived, a single bite of my pie would finish her and implicate me. Sheriff Weathers stepped forward. Miss Thorne, I'll need you to come with me. Sylvie's chair clattered as she bolted. Betty squealed. Doris stuck out a foot. Sylvie stumbled over it, falling against the dessert table. The memorial pies splattered like ironic confetti. Weathers cuffed her amid the wreckage. Sylvie sobbed, hysteria mixing with custard. She never gave me credit, she wailed. Always Doris this, Doris that. Millie said I'd never be more than a garnish. Doris watched, heart heavy but resolute. Rivalry was a fierce flame, but murder scorched everything. Later, as the Legion Hall cleared, Weathers approached Doris. Your instincts saved the day. Instincts and spices, she corrected. Nutmeg doesn't lie. He grinned faintly. You still up for judging the junior category tomorrow? Kids are devastated their blueberry contest got postponed. Doris considered the carnage of emotions swirling within her. Then she pictured young Ellie Farnsworth, braces glinting, begging Doris yesterday for lattice lessons. Yes, she decided, Oak Hollow needs its pie parade, even in pieces. She collected her unbroken Pecan bourbon from a sideboard. The sun had fully dipped, and the Legion Hall's crickets kept imperfect rhythm. She sliced a sliver, tasted. Caramel, charred oak, warmth. Outside, yellow police lights flickered down Main. Forensic teams scoured Millie's float. Doris stared at the mill pond tin where her rival's life had ended and whispered, Rest now, Millie. The parade will march on. She turned toward home, pie balanced in crook of arm, cinnamon and justice clinging to her clothes like stubborn sugar. Tomorrow the ovens would reignite, and Oak Hollow would inhale sweet hope once more.